Welcome back to our first 2025 episode of Pinal's People. Joining us today, we have longtime county resident and Supervisor Steve Miller. Supervisor Miller represents District 3 on the Pinal County Board of Supervisors. Mr. Miller, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for allowing me to be interviewed.
So to get started, one thing I always ask all our guests to kind of begin with is if you could just share a little bit about your background for people who may not be familiar with your story.
Okay. I came to Pinal County, like I told you earlier, 53 years ago. Down here, my dad was building homes, and they needed carpenters, and he had taught me how to be a carpenter at a very young age. And at the time I was working in a junkyard, and he said he'd pay me twice what I was making in the junkyard. Still wasn't a lot of money, but I came down here, fell in love with Pinal County 53 years ago. Made a great life for myself, a living, and raised 3 children, married a lady from this area, and just been very, very fortunate to find myself here in Pinal County for the past 53 years.
Yeah, that's incredible. 50 years is, almost a lifetime.
Yeah.
So one of the things I would love to know from you, Supervisor, is, as we were talking off camera, you ran for election in 2012 for the first time for the Board of Supervisors. And I'd love to know, when you think back to that time, what would you say was your primary motivation, or what kind of, what sparked the fire for you to run for election back then?
Well, at the time I ran for Board of Supervisors, I had just served almost 11 years on the City Council. And Pinal County went from, that time, 3 supervisors to 5 supervisors. And I must have been doing a pretty good job as a city councilman, because I had a lot of folks from this area asked me to run for county supervisor, take the leadership that I demonstrated on the city council to the county. And so moving over to the county was kind of inspired by, I think, the folks that had supported me over the years while I was on the city council. So that's what really kind of drove me to this position. And I think I've done a pretty good job of representing the folks from District 3. And I would tell you that decisions that we make at the Board of Supervisors, we hope that they're not just district oriented, that they do help everybody in the county. So I try to have a holistic attitude about the decisions we make at the county.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that came from my from being on the city council. Enjoyed the work, and I totally love this work here in Pinal County as the supervisor.
Mm-hmm. For people who might not be familiar with, local government and, the differences and the nuances, especially with, as you were mentioning, going from being a councilman to being a supervisor, what would you say was for you the most surprising thing to learn in the structure of county government, or how things operate, that was different from being on city council?
I would tell you the city, from city to county, the county position is a lot more hands-on. You kind of find yourself in the position, I don't know if this sounds great, but anyway, you find yourself as somewhat of a mayor of a district kind of thing, because with the city council you have a mayor, and then you have 6 councilmen, pretty concentrated efforts just to the city limits. But in the county, first of all, the territories are a lot larger, and you don't have necessarily colleagues that help you represent your district. So you find being the person that represents District 3 focusing on that area. So it is a lot more active for a county supervisor. In my case, it is a full-time job. I spend far more than 40 hours a week doing this job. But so that's the difference, I think.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So, Supervisor Miller, you have been on the Board of Supervisors since, I believe you said you were sworn in 2013. And so you've been on the board for about 12 years. Could you speak to a little bit, because in that time so much has changed about Pinal County, especially when we're talking economically. Of course, there's quite a few different industries here now. There's been changes in industries like agriculture that have come down the pipeline. So what's that been like for you, sort of, being a part of that process and getting to help, in some cases getting to help some of these businesses establish here, of course, and then in other cases helping, longtime business owners and farmers navigate those changes?
Sure. Very challenging from time to time with the growth. I heard a statistic just yesterday that we're like the 7th fastest growing county in the United States. So that just brings challenges within itself. And we've always been high on the increase in population. So just that alone brings a lot of challenges. What we've seen transpire in the last 12 years is probably less ag and more manufacturing. And so the challenges of being able to provide the infrastructure for manufacturing has been one of the things we work on the most. And that's everything from roadways, transportation, to water and sewer, and just the needs of the manufacturing entities that have come to town. The biggest challenge to my ag folks was probably, that has happened in these 12 years, was the loss of the CAP water for farming. It came 10 years early. They knew it would probably come to an end around 2031, ended up coming to an end in 2021. And so the agricultural community has had to modify kind of how they do business. The state gave them money to drill more wells. They've done that, but it's still been a challenge for agriculture to maintain the level of production that they used to have. So, in blending those two industries together, I've always just tried to be respectful of both industries and make sure that we provide what we can for them, and when and where we can. So those are probably the two biggest things that we've noticed. Certainly the rooftops. Then the third thing that came about 7 years ago was the challenge that the Department of Water Resources quit issuing certificates of assured water for housing, for residential housing in this area, in the Pinal AMA. And that is still ongoing. We're still working out, trying to come up with solutions for the water issues in the residential side. So, it's a cause and effect. It was great that we brought industry in. Now the industry wants housing for their workers close by, and I do too, because I think if you live in the community that you work in, you have a lot more vested, and you find yourself more engaged with the needs of the community. So hence what we've seen, because of no certificates of assured water, is the increase in the rental properties, build to rent, and along with apartment complexes.
Mm-hmm.
So, and those have always been, those seem to rise in the discussion from time to time. I said to a group of people, the landscape, the vista of Casa Grande is way different than it was certainly 50 years ago, and certainly even 12 years ago, with the high-rise or the multi-story apartment buildings, which was not a common thing to see in this area, and you don't have to drive very far to find one now.
Yeah.
So, and that brings more traffic challenges and issues like that. But overall, I think we do the best we can with what we have. It requires resources, and I tell everybody, when a politician says he needs resources, he's simply telling you he needs money. Mm-hmm. So, and to build that infrastructure, that's been a challenge to establish the revenues to find the money to to meet those transportation needs. But again, we stay on it as best we can.
Yeah. And so of the things you've seen the county accomplish in the time that you've been on the Board of Supervisors, what's been the thing, that surprised you the most? Whether that be a project that's come through or even just, some kind of community outreach, anything like that. What's been the thing that surprised you the most?
You kind of need to think about that one.
Take your time.
I'll tell you, when I moved here 50 years ago, I moved here because I said this place has a future. When you sit on the confluence of I-10 and I-8, two major freeways, and a railroad, that's like the perfect combination for industry of some type. It probably came 40 years later than I thought it might.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came fast. And when Lucid Motors came, it really put Casa Grande on the map. Site selectors from all types of industry started looking at this area, and we were primed for that type of growth. So I guess the thing is, the surprise was I didn't know which day it was going to happen, which year it was going to happen, but it did come from what I envisioned would happen here in time. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that really answers that question. It's just being prepared for that type of growth has been the challenge.
Mm-hmm. And are you happy that you've been able to kind of have a hands-on role in helping to, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Being a part of
Yeah,
that.
be a part of it.
Well, I'm probably happier than my wife is. My wife was born and raised here, so. But yeah, it's no, if you're growing, you're green. That's kind of the way I look at it. It does, and again, back to the revenues. I knew this place would not stay that little Sleepy Hollow forever because of the freeways and the railroad. And then I think the fact that agriculture, again, maybe that action of no water 10 years earlier from the CAP, that action taking place may have caused some of that growth too, because it was a lot easier for the farmer to get out because he knew his days were probably numbered with how long could he continue farming when they lost that CAP water.
Mm-hmm.
But back to the growth part, that the time of going to just going to the grocery store and virtually knowing almost everybody in the store, including the cashier, to we go to dinner now and may not see anybody we know. So my wife would be the one to say, "See, how many changes have you seen?"
Mm-hmm.
Because she was born and raised in this town. So, but I am proud of the work we've done here because I really believe that we've kept the citizens' interest at heart. I know there's a lot of people who do not like growth. They want us to just shut down. That's not a realistic scenario. And I strong property rights individual. If I buy a piece of property and I follow the rules and the regulations, I should be able to develop it the way I want and what is best for me. And as long as I'm not harming somebody, I think you should have that opportunity to do that. So, but that's what growth really is. It's people taking advantage of opportunity. And this county is full of opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I just have a couple more questions for you here. As we kind of, look to the future of Pinal County, and you look ahead, what would you say is your biggest concern for the county, if we look the next 10, 15, even 20 years down the line?
I think there'll be much difference. It will be, how do you manage the growth? How do you keep abreast of the needs of the communities? in which we serve, uh, uh, which would put transportation and water to the top of those two things. Along with, and when I say water, and I haven't mentioned in this interview, the need for sewer facilities where we can clean the water and recharge it back into the aquifer. That's a big thing that I've worked on for the last 7 or 8 years with all the water challenges we've had. But trying to be ahead of that has always been a challenge. I think we did a really good job when I was on the city council. On the county side, it's a little more challenging because we don't have sewer facilities, but we are really vested in the transportation side of things. And those two things will continue to be challenges for this county forever, I think. It's just those are the basic needs that people have to have.
We talked a little bit earlier about, the fact that you were on council for 11 years and you've served on the Board of Supervisors for 12. And then, of course, off camera we were saying that you had moved out here from Tempe more than 50 years ago. So, why do you think, because both of those are pretty long stints, pretty, lengthy periods of time in public service. And so I'd love to hear from you, why do you think it's important to be, to take initiative and, for you personally, serve in these kinds of roles?
To give back. As I said earlier, I mean, I've been very blessed with a family to raise in this community, and I've been able to provide for my family with businesses and work, and I just believe in giving back, and I don't have a lot of talents, but I think I do pretty good at this job for the most part, with the serving the community to give back. And it's a unique position when you're an elected official. I think that's I'm just going to kind of explain something to you. When you get elected, you're here to represent. That's what I'm here for. I'm to represent. And I like to think when I make a decision behind the dais that I'd like to get 8 people that agree with me. Maybe I'll only get 7, but 7 or 8% of the people will agree with my decisions. And so it's my hope that's the way it is on a regular basis. So anyway, but I don't make decisions based on what I want or what I need. I make those decisions based on the fact that what I think's the 80% of the people want, and that is a challenge from time to time for any individual. So, but that's how I give back, because I want to try and provide for the majority of the people that put me in this office.
Yeah. And then just one last question for you, sir.
Okay.
So when you think many, many years down the line, when people in this community are looking back on your legacy here in this county, what do you hope they take away from your story?
Well, I don't know. So I did a ribbon cutting out here about 4 years ago, and there was a supervisor here by the name of Dean Weatherly at one time. He only served 1 term, but I said to the audience, how many out here know the name Dean Weatherly? 1 person, only 1 person. Now, he had the same position I had. Now, granted, it was many years ago, but I said in that speech, I said, in 20 years, somebody will be standing up here giving a speech, and they'll say, who remembers Steve Miller? And I guess if 1 hand goes up, I'm pretty happy. You look back. I look back on former leaders in this community, Jimmy occur, you know, who was a good friend of mine, Bob Binchel. And there were things and decisions that they made that we are still benefiting from. And a lot of that had to do with economic development. They were part of a team that brought the Frito-Lay, they brought the Ross Lab kind of industries in. That was really the genesis of, all of a sudden, Casa Grande and Pinal County found themselves on the map. And they were a part of that. And so I would hope that maybe in the future somebody will say, well, you know, that Steve Miller was on the Board of Supervisors when Lucid Motors came, and maybe Lucid Motors will be really, really big and really be a part of this community, is what we really hope. I don't know. We'll see. Mm-hmm. In 20 years, you go out there and ask somebody if they remember Steve Miller.
I will make it my mission to do so. Steve Miller, thank you so much for coming
my
on
pleasure.
the show.
Thank you for interviewing me.